It is time to show you guys of the updated version of my Blue Flare deck, which can even potentially OTK your opponents out of nowhere with some epic spice included. Digimon fans, welcome back, and today we'll be showcasing the Blue Flare deck. It's been a little while since we talked about Blue Flare on the channel, and we indeed got quite a number of new support cards from BT11. This time I have decided to talk about a slightly spicier build, which is not like the typical pure blue version. We do have some red and black pepper added, where we have MetalGreymon, Antibody, and Yuuya as an additional tamer as well. The combo of these cards actually work very well for the deck, where you can actually take out your opponent's security with a decent amount of DP and make your stack immune to their option effects too for one whole turn. Don't worry, as usual, I'll be showing you guys how it all works in the combo segment later on, so be sure to stick around. But first, let's showcase the deck profile. I am also super excited to announce a new feature on my channel where I launched my very first ever YouTube membership called the AVAULT Club. By joining, you will have access to exclusive perks and contents that regular viewers don't have. Perks include the AVAULT Club Membership badge, and the best part is that you'll be able to see members-only community posts featuring my first draft deck profiles even before the video comes out. You will see more updates by me for every deck profile released and even updated deck lists and adjustments with all the lists. Your comments and questions will also have priority replies from me. So what are you guys waiting for? Click on the join button right now. Thank you all so much for the support, and I look forward to engaging with you guys. Alright, starting with Digi-egg cards, 4 copies of Wanyamon. Really great because when attacking once per turn, if you have a blue tamer in play, you get to draw one. You're always really gonna have a blue tamer, mainly being your Kiriha, so that you can fulfill that condition very easily, and yeah, drawing one is always nice. You guys don't have to necessarily play a 5th egg, but if you guys do want to play a 5th egg, another great egg to play is Baby Digimon. When attacking once per turn, if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, you get to draw 1 card. Lots of great synergy with the entire Blue Flare archetype, with its core mechanics and its effects anyways, because a lot of them really revolve around having your opponent that they have 2 or more Digimon on their board to really get maximum value, and yeah, really optional for the 5th egg, totally up to your choice. So now let's move into our rookies. We got 4 copies of Gaussmon. Gaussmon is definitely still the really good one because you always want to digivolve it and swing with it as soon as possible, because its main effect is that on deletion, you get to play 1 level 4 Digimon card with Blue Flare and its traits from your hand suspended for free, and then you get a lot of value because those cards usually either search you, lets you play more things, or draw power and whatnot, and that's really all there is with Gaussmon. Next, for the brand new rookie, we have 3 copies of ZeigGreymon from BT11. It digivolves for 0 on top of a Baby Digimon, or you digivolve it for 0 on top of a blue egg, which is always nice. Mainly, it's going to be a blue egg, of course. Your turn once per turn, when you play another Digimon with drama in its name or Blue Flare in its traits, you get to draw a card. Really good effect because this applies for both being played when you hard play it by paying memory, or if you play it with effects. You get to draw that additional card, and it has a very nice inheritable too, because your turn once per turn, when you do play another Digimon with drama in its name or Blue Flare in its traits, you get to gain a memory back. So really efficient, really great addition to the rookie lineup, which is fantastic, and yeah, this card is just that good too. Then to sum up for all the rookies, we do have 2 of each of the Floodgate rookies. This just really comes to subjective on what you guys prefer, on what you guys want to Floodgate usually. 2 Madokis and 2 Siakos. Madoki's just generally great at matchup to stopping memory gain. Siako more specifically for reducing Digivolution cost. This would actually more be effective against green decks and some other decks that do that a lot. But you guys, it's really up to you. I just like to do the even split just because if against any other matchups, I always have a decent fight against them. But otherwise, I think going for Madokis and no Siakos at all is actually not a bad idea. It's actually really what most people opt in for anyways too. But yeah, just leaving it out there for discussion. Do you guys know that there's going to be even more new Blue Flare support coming in the EX4 set, where you can combine your Blue Flare strategies alongside with Dark Knightmon? The new cards are going to make the deck even spicier than it currently is, and I'm definitely looking forward to trying them out. So if you guys are Blue Flare fans and want to see me cover that deck when it comes, then definitely be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell to stay tuned. Also, give this video a like while you're at it because it really helps, and I greatly appreciate the support from all of you, and thank you guys so much. But let's continue with the deck profile. That's it for our rookies. Let's talk about our level 4s. Of course, you still have to play the 4 copies of this Greymon here, which is really important for this deck. It has a hard play cost of 4, Digivolve for 2 on top of a blue level 3, but we're always going to be hard playing this whether with paying memory or via net effect because it is your on-play searcher. Revealing the top 4 cards of your deck, adding 2 cards with Blue Flare in its traits, among them to your hand, and you place the rest at the bottom, which is really good, very effective, and you always want to see this guy as soon as possible in the early stages of the game, and even in mid-game, so you can keep finding your pieces, gather your combos, and really important. Of course, on deletion save, we all know what it does because it puts it underneath a tamer. When attacking, once returned with its inheritable, if this Digimon has Blue Flare in its traits and your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play as well at the same time, you get to unsuspend this Digimon, making multiple swings. And yeah, being able to do that, that's just a typical blue synergy. Really good effects to have for sure. Next, we have 4 copies of Memebership, also on play effect. If you have a Kiriha in play, you get to return 1 MetalGreymon from your trash back to your hand. If you don't have a Kiriha, you get to play a Kiriha for free from your hand, which is really good because Kiriha is really important to the deck, very crucial. Basically lets you do all your digi-cross combos essentially on deletion save as well. And then its inheritable is when attacking once returned, if this Digimon has Blue Flare in its traits and your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, one of your Digimon can't attack or block until the end of your opponent's next turn. So stunning something is always fantastic. Really good with Memebership, and yeah, being able to stun anything is just that good. Then next we have 3 ZeigGreymon. This one's very simple. On play, you get to draw 1, and for every Digimon your opponent has on their board, you get to draw an additional card, which is really good. Again, cycling, finding more pieces, grabbing whatever you need, just through its draw power effect. Of course, on deletion save, and also all turns with its inheritable as well. Your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, this Digimon gets extra 1000 DP. So yeah, all turns as well, which is really good for that extra DP buff. So you guys can see with all these level 4 inheritables, they're all based off of your opponent having 2 or more Digimon on board and you having the Blue Flare in its traits, which lets you really maximize all the optimal effects with all the synergy too. And then we actually also have one more level 4 where we have the 1 Kumamon for game. Really great hybrid. You just Digivolve on top of your blue tamer and then it gives you that extra swing. Always really nice. Stripping a source when Digivolving does help a little bit with this deck because it does thrive on having lesser sources your opponent has with certain effects, which is really good. But yeah, 1 hybrid is always great for the game. I sometimes do want to have 1 or 2 more of the copies of hybrid for game, which because it's just very nice. But this particular build doesn't have much access to that many blue tamers compared to the normal build, which we'll get into more and talk about more in a second. But yeah, that's it for now. That's it for level 4s. Let's talk about our level 5s right here. We got 4 copies of MetalGreymon, still your main boss Digimon of the deck. Really strong. Material save 2. It has on play, this Digimon gains rush for the turn. Then if Digi-crossing 3 of your opponent's Digimon with Digivolution less than or equal to this Digimon's Digivolution sources can't attack or block until the end of your opponent's next turn. So a wide board stunning effect is absolutely fantastic. Really good at punishing big wide board decks generally with with very little Digivolution sources in general. So this is why this card is just that good. Otherwise, as well, its Digi-cross is -2 with Greymon and Memebership, and I'll show you guys how it all works with the combos later on as well. But otherwise, you always want to be Digi-crossing with both of them to get the maximum value of the effects. But yeah, this is the guy you always want to be seeing as soon as possible for your mid-game plays. Next, for the usual level 5, we have 2 copies of ZeigGreymon here. It can Digivolve on top of a level 4 for 4 cost. Otherwise, it can Digivolve on top of a level 5 for 2 cost. And it has Armor Purge, so really great defensive capability. On play or when Digivolving, you get to place 1 Digimon card that's Blue Flare from your hand or from underneath one of your Tamers to put it underneath this Digimon. And then if you have ZeigGreymon in its sources, you get to choose one of your opponent's Digimon and it can't attack or block until the end of the next turn. Once again, very great stunning as well. And it has Digi-cross 2 requiring MetalGreymon and ZeigGreymon, but ultimately, you always actually want to be Digivolving this on top of MetalGreymon for the most cases so that you can utilize the best effects of the Armor Purge and when Digivolving, and putting something underneath is really what it's go for. But sometimes in dire situations, you might have to Digi-cross this for 5 whole cost with your MetalGreymon and ZeigGreymon all together because you reduce 4 costs and makes it 5 instead. But still really good card to actually have for the deck, 100%. Then for newer stuff, we got 2 copies of MetalGreymon plus Cyber Launcher. Very similar to ZeigGreymon, but now you got a different option to get into a higher level 5, which is really, really cool. Now, the name of this Digimon is also treated as MetalGreymon and Cyberdramon. It also has Armor Purge. On play or when digivolving, you get to place 1 Digimon card with Blue Flare and its traits from your hand or underneath its Tamers to under this Digimon, and then to return one of your opponent's Digimon as level 3 or lower back to the bottom of the owner's deck. Really, really good at getting rid of Floodgate rookies. However, if you have Cyberdramon and its Digimon's Digivolution sources, you get to return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon back to the bottom of the deck instead, even better, which is fantastic. And keep in mind, guys, this card itself is also treated as Cyberdramon anyway, so you can actually put him underneath and it still counts, and yeah, works very, very nicely. It has Digi-cross 2 with MetalGreymon and Cyberdramon, but you rarely want to be doing that. Otherwise, you do play this for 4 costs. You actually really want to be digivolving just like ZeigGreymon to utilize the maximum amount of effects with this card right here. Okay, so now we got some spice to show you guys. We got some red spice that we actually showcased and talked about in my very first Blue Flare deck, but here we go. I actually try to play this in the main deck now, which is really, really interesting and really cool, where we have MetalGreymon X Antibody. Now, of course, it's red and it's not going to work with any of the blue stuff, but mainly this card is really intended to digivolve for 0 on top of a MetalGreymon with its very first effect, which is really good. And by doing so, this Digimon gains Security +1 until the end of your opponent's next turn. Then if this Digimon has MetalGreymon or X Antibody and its Digivolution sources, it gains extra 3000 DP until the end of the turn. So, like I mentioned, you're always going to be digivolving it on top of your Blue Flare MetalGreymon so that you can get all the effects with this card, is what it's really intended for. But we also have even cooler combos that synergize together with this particular combo later on, and this is potentially how you can pull off some OTK combos. And once again, I'll show you guys how it all works when we get to the combo segment. Then for other new top-end Digimon, I guess this is like our boss Digimon because it's a level 6 and the only level 6 that we run. We have ZeigGreymon from BT11. It can digivolve for 3 on top of a red level 5 or a blue level 5, but if you can digivolve for 2 on top of a MetalGreymon instead. When digivolving, you straight up just unsuspend this Digimon. Then if there is a card that is Blue Flare or Crossheart in its traits under this Digimon's Digivolution sources, and your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, you get to gain 2 memory back, effectively making it for free. And everything that you play is mostly going to have Blue Flare anyway, so that you can unsuspend, get into this for free, and then go for even bigger combos, which is really, really good. It also has on deletion save, which is really, really good. But not only that, because it has an additional effect other than just the regular saving mechanic, because it also lets you place 1 Blue Greymon and 1 Blue MetalGreymon from under your trash underneath one of your Tamers that is general in its traits, and it's going to be your Kiriha mostly, and really, really good. Opponent's turn, when this Digimon has Blue Flare in its traits, it gains blocker as well. If you get to get fancy with some of the combos, you can give your Digimon blocker by sliding it underneath, which is kind of interesting, pretty unique, but usually you want to use this as your top end finishing combo, which again, I'll show you guys how you can very versatilely play this card, which is really, really cool and very nice new addition for sure. That's it for all of our Digimon. Let's talk about our Tamers. Of course, you have to have the 4 copies of Kiriha. He is your general Blue Flare trait, Blue Flare card. Start of your turn, if you have 2 or less, it sets your memory to 3, being your memory tamer, which is really important. But also, when you would play Digimon with Digi-cross requirements, you can suspend him to use sources underneath all your Tamers to do the Digi-cross combo. You definitely want to see this card as soon as possible, all the time, and all your cards revolve on playing him and searching for him as quickly as possible. Then we got some spicy tamer right here. We got another one. We're actually playing 2 Yuuyas, which is also a memory tamer. And you guys can probably see, and I was explaining to you why there's a really cool synergy combo along with your MetalGreymon. Very specific to pull it off, but really cool when you do, because it does have the punch. Now, what it does is that your turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a Greymon in its name, which a lot of your level 5 armor purges, they're all Greymon in its name. So by suspending this tamer, it gets extra 2000 DP. Then if it digivolved at the same level, it's also not affected by your opponent's option cards until the end of your opponent's turn. Giving it that option protection is huge, and it has a lot of synergy with this Blue Flare deck in particular. Once again, I will talk about it and show you guys how it all works when you put it together. And Yuuya is actually a very cool spice that I really like to add into the Blue Flare deck. But that's it for all of our Tamers. Let's talk about our options. We definitely have to play 4 Blazing Memory Boost. No excuse. This is the best value card in the deck because its main effect, as soon as you hard play for the 5 cost, you reveal the top 6 card of your deck, adding 2 cards with Blue Flare in their traits from your hand, and you get to play 1 Kiriha as well among them without paying its memory cost, and you place the rest at the bottom. For 5 costs, getting 2 cards and playing a memory tamer for free is really insanely good, and yeah, one of the best cards in this game for sure, and one of the best cards for this particular archetype, which you definitely have to have 4 of. And also it has like typical memory boost effects, where main delay, you get to trash it from your battle area to gain 2 memory. Lots of value, insanely good card. Then for more memory, just the standard typical blue stuff, we have the 2 copies of Hammer Spark. Hammer Spark, I just like it. Gives you a bit more flexibility with plays and stuff like that. Really optional based on what you guys like to have. But otherwise, you have to play at least the 1 Ice Wall. Ice Wall being the best blue card in the deck as well. Really, really important staple that you must have there. And then the final, last option card here I have is just a removal. Plasma Decadra Launcher, just to bounce your opponent's Digimon back to their hand, which is really good. When you would use this card, if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, you get to reduce the cost by 2, making it a 5 cost, and you get to return one of your opponent's Digimon that's level 6 or higher back to their hand. Otherwise, security effect is just like a Kaitis. Return any of your opponent's Digimon back to their hand is very, very good and very valuable removal as a one-off for sure. That's it for our 50 card main deck. Let's talk about all the other cards that we can actually potentially play and include in this deck as well. First, we do have ZeigGreymon, which is a very neat card because it's a hand effect, and main, if you have a Digimon with Blue Flare in its traits, by paying 3 memory, you get to place it underneath one of your Digimon as its bottom Digivolution sources, and you get to unsuspend that Digimon, which is kind of nice. I do feel that paying 3 memory just to unsuspend is a little bit too much over now that I played the deck a little bit more, but it does have a inheritable of all turns while your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play. It does get an extra 1000 DP, which is kind of neat. But otherwise, yeah, a one-off tech is really at most you would actually play in this deck too with this card. Then we have another really interesting level 6 you can actually include. There's a lot of hype and a lot of discussion about it recently, where we have MetalGreymon from BT11. Everyone's completely forgotten about this card because it's not good enough. All Force was definitely the better one to go for that most people like to talk about and it's fan favorite. But MetalGreymon actually is very underrated, and it actually does really good because when Digivolving, you get to return one of your opponent's Digimon that's level 5 or lower back to their hand. If there was no Digimon returned via this effect, your opponent is actually forced to add their top card of their security to their hand. So it's kind of almost like trashing their security because it doesn't get to activate the effects and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. And they are getting a little bit of value because they get to get 1 extra card, but it doesn't really matter. If you get to push for aggression, it's actually really good because it also has an all turns effect where once per turn, when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, you get to gain a memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. Keep in mind, this is a very, very cool effect because if your opponent adds a card to their hand via an effect, whether by drawing, whether by searching, and it also includes the fact that they add the card from the security to their hand, you get to gain a memory and really disrupt their plays, which is really, really nice about MetalGreymon and really, really cool. Very fun tech that I definitely do highly recommend you guys try it out for yourself as well. Then we have another tamer, which is Soren Joe. You guys can see we don't really have room for it, but Soren Joe is still the secondary best tamer if you want to focus more on the blue build instead of playing Yuuya. If you don't like the Yuuya type of build, go for the Soren Joe instead. It is just really good. Stripping sources, gaining lots of memory, forcing your opponents to play around it is very difficult at times, and they give you so much value as always, and it's just one of the best cards to have alongside for Blue Flare for sure. Then for some of the other option cards, we have Sorai. You guys might be thinking like, oh, this is crazy, you have to include Sorai. Sorai is a very important card for the deck, which is almost a staple. And I do agree sometimes because its main effect trashes the top 4 Digivolution sources of your opponent's Digimon, and until the end of your opponent's next turn, all their Digimon that doesn't have any sources cannot attack. But I sometimes feel 4 costs is quite a bit to pay because you have to pay 4 costs and then it passes turn usually. And stripping sources is nice and stopping your opponents and stunning the board and is very situational. I feel like people can kind of play around it a little bit. They just simply need to Digivolve on top of a Digimon that has no sources, and then it will have a source and then it can basically attack. That's how Sorai works. And overall, it is a very nice defensive card and it can buy you a turn sometimes, and it's very, very clutch, which I do agree. But this whole build is really focusing on sort of like the OTK, big punch, taking out your opponent as quickly as possible. So I'm not really interested in playing that many defensive cards in Sorai. However, if you're playing the pure blue version of Blue Flare, this card then definitely is really, really good, and you must include it for sure. So I'm just giving you my thoughts there. Otherwise, you have other removal options, really, really good for the deck. We have Rattlestar, Cocytus Breath. Rattlestar is really good because it's very memory efficient, costs very little, bounces one of your opponent's Digimon that's level 5 or lower back to their hand, but if they have 3 or more Digimon on board, you can spin back to the bottom of any Digimon to the bottom of your deck. That's really good. I really like that effect. Being able to bottom deck is just really good. Otherwise, Cocytus Breath has no conditions of any levels or whatsoever, and it just straight up bounces your opponent's Digimon, which is very, very good in certain matchups too. Very generic, great removal, and those are the other options I have here. Alright, that's it for all the cards I'm going to show and talk about for this particular video, but now let's show you guys how to play in the combo segment, and most importantly, how you can potentially OTK your opponent, which is really, really cool with this deck. So, early stages of the game, your game plan is of course to hatch your egg. There's only really 2 main rookies that you'll be seeing very often to Digivolve, which is your Gaussmon and your Dracomon. They have a little bit of different attempts and sort of approaches on what you want to do exactly with these 2 cards, but let's just say Gaussmon is the most typical one from before, and as soon as you have it, you just want to promote it up as soon as you can, but making sure you have one of these level 4s in your hand for it to have its most valuable synergy. Now, you don't really get to use this inheritable with Manyamon in the early stages just because you may not have a tamer set up yet, and it has to be a blue tamer specifically as well, meaning Kiriha is your only condition that you have to meet. But let's just say you swing in, and if it gets deleted, you immediately get to play one of these 4 from your hand, and depending on the situation, you want to pick and choose what you have. If you don't have much choices, you got to go with whatever you have during the moment, but Greymon's really great because it will search and find more pieces. Remember, it's going to be suspended. Otherwise, MetalGreymon is also really good because it lets you play Kiriha for free. Otherwise, in the later stages of the game, it gets you your MetalGreymon back if it ever gets deleted, and cycling so you can go for your Digi-cross combos again is always really, really good. Otherwise, if your opponent established quite a few Digimon on their board already at the beginning, Decadramon is very most valuable because you draw 1 and you get to draw extra 1 card for every Digimon they have. So if they establish a whiteboard in the early stages, there you go, Decadramon's great. But yeah, really whatever these you have is just always great. As for Dracomon instead, if you have Dracomon, you don't really want to swing in because you don't have that much value. It doesn't really have its save, it doesn't really have the inheritable just yet unless you have your tamer already. So you actually want it to sit on the board a little bit because you might hard play your Greymon, you might hard play some of these guys right here during your phases of your turn. And this is when you get most value out of it, because when you do play one of these guys, you get to search and do their effects and combos. Then Dracomon lets you draw an additional card afterwards. So you're actually turbo searching and drawing very, very quickly, which is what blue does best. Otherwise, like I said, you really want to establish your Kiriha as soon as possible. So there's 2 ways. One of them is being MetalGreymon, and the other way is, of course, the best value way is playing your Blazing Memory Boost. Understand your ratios that you have in your hand. If you don't see Kiriha in the early stages in your hand, that must mean there's a high chance you can cycle for it and high roll it and have it come out from the search of Blazing Memory Boost. I always just go for it anyways, just because it's just very easy to access it, and once you do, you're just rolling and the deck just goes and really, really turbos and very quickly. It's very important. Again, you need to see your Kiriha as soon as possible. So yeah, Blazing Memory Boost is always my go-to card as soon as possible. Don't be shy with the memory. You have to pay for it. You get your value back, and don't worry about it. So, of course, now that you have these things established, of course, you just mad swing with your level 4s as much as you can, really. There's nothing too much that you need to think about because now you're safe, because they can be saved. So as they get deleted, just save them underneath Kiriha or any of your tamers that you have present on the board, which is really good. And then Dracomon is really when you get to choose if you want to attack or not. It's kind of nicer that the longer it sticks on the board, just the better, and your opponent just has to deal with it. Unless you know particularly Dracomon's in threat in the next turn, then just go ahead and swing with it anyways, so that you can get more value with Vanyamon and draw as well. But it doesn't have save, so if it ever gets deleted, that it is what it is. Okay, now for the next step, let's talk about the MetalGreymon and Digi-crossing combo. MetalGreymon is your bridge of all Digi-crossing, and since now you have Kiriha, you're going to be starting your turn at 3 memory every single time. And all you need for MetalGreymon is basically a Greymon and a male Bergermon to Digi-cross right there. You can use pieces from your hand or from the field as well in the battle area to basically go into it. For 3 costs is really what you want to do, and again, great at punishing whiteboards as soon as you do so. So once you do that, you Digi-cross, let's just say you use your Kiriha anyways, you pay your 3 memory right there, and you cross there. Once you cross there, if your opponent has 3 Digimon with 2 or less sources, stun them all. And then if your opponent has a Digimon that is big stack, and as long as I have 2 or more Digimon, you immediately just attack with it. Then you get to trigger its effects. With Greymon, if this Digimon has Blue Flare and your opponent has 2 or more Digimon, ideally you want to be at the situation where your opponent does have 2 Digimon. You get to unsuspend it. And then otherwise, then you go for next male Bergermon. You get to stun your opponent's bigger stack that has more sources than MetalGreymon, so then it cannot attack or block, and you just control the board from then on. And then you just continue swing over and over again, and you don't have to worry about it. If it ever gets deleted, it can save these pieces, and then you just find another MetalGreymon afterwards, and next, and so on. Now that we got the main core combo, there's the extender level 5 combos, and I want to show you guys why the spice is really good with the Yuuya. Now, let's just say back in a situation, you just finished Digi-crossing into MetalGreymon, and if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon, then you just go ahead and swing and get to unsuspend and utilize all those one attacking effects right there. You'll be at 0 memory. Usually, you will always have like a blazing memory boost, and you're trying to save these for the big plays for later on, and these are the big plays that you're trying to save for to go ahead and do so, because you're going to need that 2 extra memory. By popping the blazing memory boost, you at 2 memory right now. Or let's just say your MetalGreymon stayed on the board and you started at 3 in the next turn, but ideally you want to just go all out aggressive when you can. These are the times when you can go into your level 5 bridgers right here. Now, in particular, mostly the first one is always going to be DeckGreymon. You Digivolve into DeckGreymon for 2, and then you get to place something underneath, and ideally you're going to be playing a Digimon from your hand or from underneath like one of your Tamers. And then at this moment, this is when you can suspend your Yuuya to give it extra 2000 DP for the turn and no options affected until the end of your opponent's turn, which is going to be really, really good. And then you can just safely swing over, and your DeckGreymon right now at this moment will be at least 12k, if not potentially 13k if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon on board, and it has Armor Purge. You don't have to worry about it. It has a lot of protection, which is why Yuuya is really great. Same concept with MetalGreymon Cyber Launcher right here. If you go into MetalGreymon Cyber Launcher instead, it's also still a Greymon, and you're also Digivolving on the same level still. And because we don't play Cybergermon, you can actually slide in MetalGreymon Cybergermon underneath instead, and you get to bottom deck a level 4. Otherwise, you bottom deck a level 3. Otherwise, you place anything. If you want to get creative, you can actually place a ZeigGreymon underneath. So now it actually gains the blocker as well, and you can get very creative with these plays, which is why it's really fun and super cool. But anyways, let's now show you guys how you would do it with MetalGreymon X. Now, instead, you might have your blazing memory boost back here, which is totally fine, and you still be at like the 2 extra memory, but let's just say you're at 3 and you're at 0 after Digi-crossing right here with Kiriha. So you Digivolve for 0 into MetalGreymon X Antibody. You're allowed to, because of that black box text, you can Digivolve on top of MetalGreymon, and this is a MetalGreymon. Spend Yuuya as well at the same time, gaining security +1 extra 3000 DP until the end of your opponent's turn. Yuuya will also give it additional 2000 DP at this moment. You're not going to have this DeckGreymon. Let's just take this out quickly to show you guys what it really looks like, but also no options affected. So now your MetalGreymon X Antibody should be at 13k DP at this moment, and 13k is pretty large, really, right? So all you have to do, it gains that security +1. You swing in right here for 2 checks, which is going to be really, really good. Now, keep in mind, you can't use your Greymon and your male Bergermons in Hurtable anymore because the MetalGreymon X Antibody does not have Blue Flare anymore in its traits. So what you want to ideally do is you want to swing first with this, unsuspend, and then go into this to swing another time. So that's 3 checks in total right there at this moment. Now, then, this is when you can Digivolve ZeigGreymon on top if you want. Now, if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon, then great. You might need to use some memory manipulation to help yourself with this. MetalGreymon X Antibody doesn't count as MetalGreymon for the 2 cost, but otherwise, you can pop the memory boost, go to 2, and then pay the 3 to Digivolve into ZeigGreymon right here. passing your opponent to 1. If your opponent has 2 or more Digimon, you get to unsuspend. Well, you get to unsuspend either way, and you get to gain that 2 memory back so that you at least get to retain your turn right here. And keep in mind, your opponent's down to only with 2 security left after the checks with MetalGreymon. Now, the really cool part is that the MetalGreymon security +1 still transfers to ZeigGreymon until the end of your opponent's next turn, and the extra 3000 DP, and the extra 2000 from Yuuya, and no options. So at this point, you can just quickly swing in for another 2 checks to take out all your opponent's security. And then let's just say if you had another body on the board in the beginning, you just swing and finish the game with it right there, kind of fulfilling the OTK combo right there. If you have a bit more memory to work with somehow, you play, like say you played a Hammer Spark to gain 2, and then you had another Kiriha that's unsuspended on the board, you can Digivolve into Kumamon to swing in for game. But that all the way drives back to why I like to say having the Dracomon stick on the board is pretty nice, because you're gonna get a lot of value through your drawing with playing your effects and stuff like that. And this Dracomon right here can be the finisher to finish the game as well. So if you ever do pull off this combo, it is actually really, really wild and super cool because of how you can sort of unsuspend and do all these crazy stuff. Obviously, in the early stages of the game, you would have chipped your opponent down with a Gaussmon, with a Greymon, with a MetalGreymon. So your opponent might even be down at 3 security to begin with. And if they're down at 3 security to begin with, going back to this combo right here, you swing in with MetalGreymon, you unsuspend, and then you Digivolve for 0 into MetalGreymon X, and you swing in for the other 2 checks. They're at 0 security at this moment, and then if you're able to sort of pay and get into your ZeigGreymon afterwards, and then you can unsuspend and swing in to finish off like that. Otherwise, you can just Digivolve straight on MetalGreymon too sometimes right here for the 2 cost, and if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon, you gain that memory back once again, and then you can finish the game like that as well. Really, really cool stuff. Really, really nice combos, and I do definitely like this new addition and the spiciness of this deck, and I have a lot of fun when I play it for sure. That'll wrap up for the deck profile for today. If you guys enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please give it a like. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, or questions, be sure to share it with everyone in the comments down below. We got lots more Digimon videos and content coming, so be sure to hit that subscribe button right now, turn on that notification bell to stay tuned. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video. Is about signing out.